Hello everyone and welcome. So in this video I'll be sharing a few tips on how to work with the MaterialX and Karma procedural nodes. I will also be showing you how to debug nodes, how to solo them, and how to combine normal maps, and a few more tips and tricks. So let's get started. So as you can see, I built this very simple scene to show you some of the procedural nodes. And let's start by looking at the first tip is on how to debug nodes or solo nodes. Actually, it's pretty simple. You just select a node and press X and you will start to visualize an emission shader, a flat emission shader. So this is really useful when you're trying to debug noises and other types of nodes. So as you can see, if I disable these nodes in here and I look at this one or these outputs, as you can see I have just the text repeating once with the MaterialX image, and I can enable this one. It won't make any difference, it's just the texture coordinates. Then I can multiply it to repeat, so 5 by 5 since it's a square texture. But if you look at the interior in here, it's offset by half, so I can use an add node and it will move to the center, as you can see. So just moving the X component by 0.5. And I also have a normal map in here, as you can see, just a wrinkles normal map. And anytime you can press X again and you will visualize the main shader. So as you can see. And I also have an attribute that I'm fitting in a range, so increasing a bit the low and multiplying by a scale value that I'm feeding to the scale of the normal map. And at the end I have some parts that have more wrinkles and others that have less, based on an attribute. So let's have a look at the second shader, so tablet front. And I also have the same texture in here repeating, so is this one on the outside, ignore this inside. So in the same exact position. And let's see, the first pattern is actually pretty simple, it's just a grid, as you can see. It's just a grid that I rotated 45 degrees with a MaterialX rotate 2D, or you can use also a place 2D. Then I'm just extracting one channel and mixing it. In this case I'm just inverting it, but I could use a MaterialX invert, but for some reason I use the mix. Just set foreground to 0 and background to 1. And then I have a more complex pattern, not very complex, but let's have a look. So if I disable these 3 nodes by pressing Q and I look at this one, as you can see it's just a MaterialX line, which is just a rounded line. As you can see, I have placed it and sized it accordingly. And then if we try to repeat this node, it won't actually allow you in the node itself. So what you can try is the multiply. As you can see, I'm repeating it 16 by 30, but the texture disappears, so I'm trying with an add node, placing it in the center, but that doesn't work. And what I need to do actually is use a modulo to repeat the texture, to repeat the pattern. And I'm using the scale X divided by 2 in here, since I want it in the center. And as you can see, these add nodes just makes everything work from the center instead of that random position. So yeah, that's how you can repeat MaterialX line and other patterns that are non-tileable by default, so using the modulo along with the multiply. So as you can see, if I go in here and change this to 60, it just will repeat more times. So in this case I have to look at this one, so I can change the repetition to 60. In this case I want slightly less, and I am doing basically the same in here. So let's look at this one, but in this case this MaterialX line is pointing is oriented along the x-axis, so manipulating these values. And the only difference that I'm doing in here, so if I disable these nodes, you can see that I will have the pattern along the edges, which I don't want. So I created a MaterialX place 2D node that I'm setting the pivot to the center and scaling it slightly on the Y, so I get rid of those edges. And the rest is the same, I'm just multiplying, in this case 30 by 16, doing an add and playing with the value of the modulo so I can fit it between the pills, as you can see. You can have a look at the file on Patreon, and also how I did the modeling is right in here. Everything is procedural, so you can play with it. And the final tip is on how to layer bump maps or normal maps, how to combine them, how to blend them. So this is actually pretty simple. As you can see, I have this pattern in here and these maxed lines that I just use a MaterialX Max to combine both in an additive mode. Then I'm placing that, I am connecting that to the height of a MaterialX bump that will just connect to the normal. And the second bump map, I'm creating another one in here and I'm connecting it to the normal inputs of the master bump map, let's say. And you can do the same with the MaterialX normal map. So yeah, that's basically it. As you can see, very simple setup, but that requires a bit of tips and tricks that you gather along the journey. Mostly I got these from watching Unreal tutorials, and you start to learn how to tile nodes, how to offset with an add or a subtract. So yeah, that's basically it. As always, you can grab the file on Patreon and see how I build this in, how I did the modeling. As you can see, you have a back part also that you can try to play with. And yeah, if you want to support the channel, make sure to check out my Houdini courses also that I have on Patreon shop. And that's all. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.